Hello and welcome into the first part of a 16-part series. This is going to be previewing every NHL team that is going to make the playoffs. Choosing where to start was kind of an easy choice because there's only like two playoff matchups that are fully decided yet, and the options were Winnipeg, Colorado, or the Islanders and the Carolina Hurricanes. I decided to go to Winnipeg first. They're going to be the first team that I talk about. Each video is going to be about 10 minutes on each team. Slideshow presentation type style with my face in the corner. So as I mentioned, Jets are the team we're starting with today. And this is a very interesting Jets team. I think it's probably the best Jets team that we've seen since the conference finals loss 5 years ago or so, maybe 6 years ago. It's been a minute regardless. The Jets have kind of struggled to kind of go from transitioning on from the team that they previously had to kind of this newer version of the Jets team. I feel like a lot of headaches in the locker room over the last few years have been bad for the Jets, to be honest. Like, they had a lot of stuff going on with Blake Wheeler. They had a lot of stuff going on with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Now I feel like the Jets are just kind of focused on hockey and not really the things going around the edges, which I think is good for them and good for their outlook going into the playoffs. As you can see right now, the Jets have only one thing left to be determined in that season, and that's if they get home ice versus the Colorado Avalanche. They play the Kraken tonight, and then they have another game after that. If they beat the Kraken tonight, they won't have to worry about anything. Or if the Avalanche lose, they won't have to worry about anything. Regardless, it looks like Winnipeg is probably going to get that home ice, so we're going to go on the assumption that they do. The first thing to talk about when it comes to this Jets team compared to last year's is scoring. And as you can see on the left here, we have last year's scoring, and on the right, we have this year's scoring. I put goals as the thing that I care about here the most. The top goal getters are going to be usually your top point getters overall. Not always the case, though, but unless you're like Sam Reinhart and you have 50 goals and like 20-some assists, 30 assists. Regardless, the big thing I noticed when I look at the stats this year compared to last year is just the amount of depth that Winnipeg has that they didn't have last year. This year, 14 players over 30 points. Last year, only 9. This year, 16 players over 20 points. Last year, over 12. This year, 14 players over 10 goals. Last year, only 8. That's 6 more players who are giving decent contributions in depth roles. Along with just having some good young players around the edges now. Up-and-comers like Cole Perfetti, Gabe Vilardi. Just more of a factor. Like last year, you see players on the list like Sam Gagner, Blake Wheeler. I feel like this young team, I shouldn't say young team, but the younger players bring more speed to this core. And the core is not bad. The core is not bad at all. Tyler Toffoli's been a good get for them. Sean Monahan having a career rebound after some downtime of not being too relevant. You got your guys like Scheifele, Ehlers, Kyle Connor who are at the top. Nino Niederreiter, very good depth player for the playoffs. This forward core has a lot to like about it. They may not have the highest of high-end scoring, but in terms of a team that can roll 3-4 lines and punch you in the mouth with all of them, the Jets have that going on. The next thing to talk about with the Jets is special teams, and this is kind of where the concerns start to come to light for the Jets, because we talked about how good their depth scoring is. The special teams, not great. Right now, their power play runs at a 19% clip, converting about 1 out of 5 times. This would be the worst in the playoffs, and will be, unless Pittsburgh makes the playoffs, because Pittsburgh's running worse than that. On top of that, they have the 21st ranked penalty kill, which would be the 4th worst in the playoffs at 77.2. Luckily for them, penalties are typically called less in the playoffs. That being said, the deeper you get in the playoffs, the more that's true. In the early rounds, refs still kind of call penalties. That being said, there's talent here to overcome the power play issues. The penalty kill, though, I think they kind of are what they are at that point. I don't think the Jets are a team that exactly locks it down. They have Connor Hellebuck who can lock it down. But defensively, I don't think the Jets are a team that's going to smother you to death as well as maybe they have in the past. They are pretty mid in most advanced analytics that you'll look at. They just kind of benefit defensively from having a top 5 goalie in the league, which that's part of your team. You rely on that. That is great. That being said, though, if you're getting scored on at like 23-24% of the time on the penalty kill, that's not amazing, to say the least. So this is kind of my first concern. We're then going to transition to just looking at the offensive lines to see how the Jets stack up. I really think this first line is going to have to play very high, play to a higher standard than they have in the regular season for the Jets to really make a serious run. I think that's pretty much can be said for all playoff teams, though. You need your stars to play like stars. You need your depth scorers to score, and you need your defense to lock in. Nothing really too shocking there. You're going to need Kyle Connor to be the 40 to 50 goal scorer that he can be. You're going to need Mark Scheifele to be the top line center that he can be. You're going to need Gabe Vilardi to step up and really have potentially a coming out party in this playoffs, which I think he is capable of having. Second line, Sean Monahan having a resurgence in his career. Tyler Toffoli can score goals. Nikolai Ehlers, in my opinion, a very underrated player in the league. Does a lot of his damage at 5-on-5. Good second line. Third line, Niederreiter. Decent scoring option for the playoffs. Mason Appleton, Lowry. Decent depth pieces. Nemestikov, Iafallo, Barron. It's not a terrible fourth line. They can score, which not every team can claim that their fourth line scores. So that's something. Like, this team's going to come at you in layers. They can do that. They're not going to be able to not score. They're going to be able to score with depth. As we went over by the amount of players who can put up points, you can't really fall asleep against any line on the Jets. And then go to defense. Now, this D-core isn't terrible. It just doesn't jump off the page as a team that has a D-core that can win a Stanley Cup. DeMeo, Pionk, Sandberg on the right side, Morrissey, Dillon, Stanley on the left. With Connor Hellebuck behind them. They actually got good backup goaltending this year, which hasn't always been the case in Winnipeg. If you look at the stats would suggest that Brossoit has played better. Obviously, if you know puck, you know Hellebuck's that guy. But it's good to see that they're getting good backup goaltending because they've needed that for a while. And that's why the Jets are where they are in the standings compared to not being as high in previous years. I'm not sure if I'm out of touch, but I just don't believe in the Jets' D-core. We'll talk a little bit about Josh Morrissey in the last segment of this. One thing to bring up, a stat that kind of jumps out to me is expected goals against, expected goals for versus actual goals for and actual goals against. As you can see with actual differential, they're plus 46. And basically what you need to take out of this is that their goaltending bails them out in these chances more so than not. As you can see, Vancouver and the Bruins are up there, and that goes to show that teams with good goaltending benefit in the stat, where you go down to the Flyers on the other end of the spectrum at minus 49, the Blackhawks at minus 36, the Ottawa Senators at minus 35. Those are teams that don't have consistent goaltending, and they don't get bailed out. Goals that are supposed to be goals go in against those teams. Goals that are supposed to be goals don't always go in against the Jets, the Bruins, and as you can see, some surprising teams like the Coyotes and Sabres down there. But that's just something that I think is interesting, is how far ahead the Jets are of most other teams in this category. Is that something you can bank on in the playoffs? So I'm not really sure. But if they play to that level and if they get that goaltending going forward into the playoffs, it could be the case. Let's talk about the playoff history for the Jets here. So as you can see, they have won one playoff series since their conference finals run in 2018. They made the playoffs 5 times since then. They've lost in the first round 3 of them. The only win, I opened it up just to show you, they beat Edmonton 4-0, the All-Canadian division, if you remember that. And then they got swept by Montreal in 4 games on that improbable Montreal run to the Cup final, which still blows my mind looking back on it, that Montreal basically just got to the Cup final. That's absurd, to be honest, to look back on. And one thing I want to basically show here is that oftentimes there is a build-up to becoming a champion. Teams usually don't just show up and win the Cup or even make the Cup final. Usually there are some struggles on the way. Like Tampa, before they won the Cup, they lost a Cup final to Chicago. The Bruins in 2011, I'm a Bruins fan. The amount of heartbreaking series losses they had, like to Carolina, I want to say in 08 or 09, we got reverse swept by Philadelphia the year before we won the Cup. Usually, though, there are signs of a team being able to make runs, and I think we're far enough removed from that conference final to kind of question, can Winnipeg win rounds? Can they go forward? It's kind of one of those things where if you keep losing in the playoffs, is it kind of a mental thing? Kind of like with the Leafs. Like, it took them forever to win their first playoff series. They finally did it last year, and who knows, maybe that monkey off the back can make it so they can win another round this year. Just a mental thing. Hockey's very mental. If you believe in yourself in that you're going to win, there's a good shot that you can win if you're good enough. That's why I think the Bruins, my team, do so well in the playoffs typically and win rounds against equal level teams, is because they just have that belief in them that they're going to do it, like that mentality. And the Jets, you got to question, can they develop that this year? I'm not really too sure. The last few years do not show it, but sometimes it's not seen until it's there. We're going to talk about 3 X factors, and then we're going to wrap it up with the Jets. I think the 3 most important performers on this team. First, we're going to go to Gabe Vilardi. And this is important not because he is someone who is expected to really carry the water for the Jets, but someone who could be an unexpected star in the playoffs. Usually teams have a guy who steps up, scores more than you'd think, big game players. Gabe Vilardi, we don't really know what we're going to get out of him in the playoffs this year. He has 5 goals in his last 7 games. He has 35 and 45. He's starting to look like a real good player in the league. The question is, can he take that next step forward and do it in the playoffs? This is all potential based, though. We don't really know. We then go to second. This is Josh Morrissey. This is the player that I want to see kind of take a step forward. Like last year, I'm going to reference the Bruins because I'm a Bruins fan a lot, but Brandon Montour of Florida put the Florida Panthers on his back offensively in the playoffs, scored a lot of big goals. Josh Morrissey, he has about 10 points in 37 playoff games. He had 1 in 3 games last year. Brandon Montour didn't show much in the playoffs until last year, though. Can Josh Morrissey step up, be that top guy on the D pair, on the D end, who carries it for the Jets? It's going to be something to see there, because I think at the end of the day, if you look at the Jets, they're probably going to go how Josh Morrissey goes. If he's not performing, they're not going far. If he's performing, they have a way better shot at going far. He needs to be that point-per-game defenseman, or almost point-per-game defenseman that he has been. And the obvious X factor is Connor Hellebuyck. As you saw from a few of the stats I brought up earlier, in just knowledge of, if you're at this point in the video, you know who Connor Hellebuyck is. You know what he's about. Top 5 goalie in the league, in my opinion. Someone who I would definitely want in my net for the playoffs. The Jets are lucky to have him. If you build a team in your argument in the playoffs as well, we have Hellebuyck in the net. That's not good enough, but it's good if you have him in the net to put behind a good forward core. And I think the D core for the Jets, that's kind of where you're going to see make or break. Can the Jets win the playoff? Can the Jets win the Stanley Cup? It's going to come down to that D core playing above their heads. That being said, with what I expect, they have a really tough draw in the first round against Colorado. That series could go either way. Food for thought here. The Jets are 3-0 against the Avalanche in the regular season. Now, you can wipe your butt with that stat and throw it away, because it does not matter come next week when they're entrenched in a playoff series. But it's just a thought that maybe matchup-wise the Jets could have something here. Might mean nothing. We really don't know until we see it. And then beyond that, they're probably going to get Dallas, unless Dallas gets upset. It's a really tough road for the Jets. I think the Jets at best will probably, if I was a betting man, which I am, I say the Jets could win this first round. I'm not sure I'd bet on it, though. And I don't really think they'd probably make it through Colorado and then Dallas, though. I think this team at best is going to win a round. Not to say that's anything negative. I think this team could be better in the future. I just don't really have a lot of stock in the Jets right now. So I'm going to say Jets. I'm not really going to make a decision on the Jets versus Colorado series right now, but I think they can win a round. I don't really see them going beyond that. So that's my thoughts on the Jets, and stats, some thoughts, just, overall overview of the team and what we're looking at going into the playoffs. If you have any thoughts, maybe corrections, it has been a while since I have made a video and talked for 13, 14 minutes straight about a team. I'm sure I messed up somewhere along the way. I hope you enjoyed this, though. Any comments at all, I respond to all of them. The next video will probably be the Avalanche video, and then after that it will probably be the Islanders and then the Hurricanes, so you have that to look forward to. All 16 should be out by Saturday when the playoffs start. Can't wait for that. It's like Christmas for me. Hope to see you in the next video. If you want to follow, subscribe. Peace. Bye.